All right, 2022 college football team schedule previews. I'm doing a whole series of this video. There's a playlist on this channel, so just click on the playlist and it'll bring up the entire list of teams that I've done so far. I'm going to get through as many teams as I can throughout the month of April. All the teams that I'm doing are coming from the Patreon page. If you're a member of the Patreon page, make sure you go over there, find the post about the schedule previews, and let me know what team it is you want to see. If you're not on the Patreon page, there's a link in the description that'll take you over there, and you can find the information there. But up today, Notre Dame 2022 Notre Dame college football schedule preview. Of course, Notre Dame not in a conference, but they do have to play. I thought they had to play 5 ACC games a year, but I don't know what I'm missing there. I put the schedule up in a minute. You'll see they're playing 4 ACC teams this year. You get a lot of comments every year about how Notre Dame, they're not in a conference or they have an easy schedule. You can't say that this year. Notre Dame does not have an easy schedule this year. It was one of the tougher schedules really that I've seen. And I'll sort of point some of that out here in just a second. But, yeah, Notre Dame 2022 college football schedule preview. Real quick, last year, of course, Brian Kelly's last year in Notre Dame, he left willingly and took the LSU job. Wasn't fired, quit, basically, to take the job at LSU after going 11-2 last year. Well, I guess he was 11-1. He left before the bowl game. But anyway, Notre Dame 11-1 in the regular season. But, of course, the regular season is not Notre Dame's problem. I mean, Notre Dame has been averaging about 10 or 11 wins a year for the last decade or so. That hasn't been the issue. The issue with Notre Dame, of course, has been the postseason. Notre Dame has not won a major postseason game since 1991. They have lost every BCS bowl game they've ever played in. They lost every BCS title game they ever played in. They've lost every New Year's Six bowl game they've ever played in. And they've lost every college football playoff game they've ever played in. And they've lost every conference championship game they've ever played in. That streak dates back 30 years. So it's been a long time. Their regular season loss last year came at home to Cincinnati, a team that did make the playoffs, of course, becoming the first group of 5 team to get in, losing in the first round to Alabama. But Notre Dame lost last year to Cincinnati 24-13. They won the rest of their games, including a win against Florida State, win against Wisconsin, win against Southern Cal, win against North Carolina, a win last game of the regular season against Stanford, which put themselves in prime position for a New Year's Six game against Oklahoma State. They played in the Fiesta Bowl, and I don't even have to tell you, they lost because that's just what Notre Dame does. If they make it to one of these major postseason games, they lose. And such has been the case for, like I said, over 30 years. There's something like 0-11 in major postseason games in the last 30 years. They lost in the Fiesta Bowl to Oklahoma State 37-35. The significance about that game, of course, is who was Notre Dame's coach in that game, and that was Marcus Freeman. Brian Kelly announced he was leaving after the regular season. Notre Dame then was awarded a trip to the Fiesta Bowl. Notre Dame named Marcus Freeman interim head coach, who was on the defensive staff at Notre Dame at the time under Brian Kelly, and then went on to name Marcus Freeman permanent head coach. Or no, not permanent, but they took the interim tag off, and they have made him head coach. He's the first head coach in Notre Dame history to ever get the head coaching job at Notre Dame without ever having been a head coach somewhere else before. So this is his first time being a head coach. Anytime you change coaches, it's a crapshoot. You change coaches to a guy that's never been a head coach before, and it increases the uncertainty. There are no guarantees when it comes to making coaching changes. There are plenty of examples of first-time head coaches who have failed miserably, and there are examples of first-time head coaches who do pretty well. Kirby Smart at Georgia had never been a head coach before. He's doing okay in Athens. There are other people who have gotten shots or opportunities and it hasn't panned out. Will Muschamp comes to mind, as well as a few others. So anyway, the point is we don't really know. What we do know about Marcus Freeman is what? The players love him. The administration loves him. The fans love him. Sounds a lot like Manny Diaz at Miami. Another first-time head coach. And, of course, that did not work out, but we'll see. Let's take a look at Notre Dame's 2022 schedule. Can they continue the streak of 10, 11-plus win regular seasons? It's going to be tough. This is a difficult schedule here for Notre Dame. Very difficult. And it starts right away, week 1, on the road. Shout out to Notre Dame and Ohio State, by the way, for playing these games at home and homes. I hate neutral site games. I know Georgia plays in them. It doesn't matter. I don't like them. Just because Georgia does something doesn't mean I think it's the right thing to do. I do not like neutral site games outside of major postseason games. Regular season neutral site games to me are ridiculous. I have this weird idea about how college football games should be played on college campuses. I know that's like Cambodian math or something, but I just feel like college football games should be played on college campuses. So shout out to Notre Dame and Ohio State for scheduling this home and home. Comes at a bad time for Notre Dame, though. Brand new head coach who's never coached before, and you have to go on the road and play one of the best teams in all of college football in 2022, the Ohio State Buckeyes. 3 Heisman candidates on offense: quarterback C.J. Stroud, running back Travion Henderson, wide receiver, is it Jackson Najigba Smith? I know it's Najigba Smith. I'm not 100% on that first name, but anyway, tough draw for Notre Dame here out of the gate. Now, the good news, if you're Notre Dame, Ohio State did lose a home game early in the season last year, right? Oregon came into Columbus and bent them over. Now, C.J. Stroud was a young quarterback at that time. He's got an entire year's worth of experience now. It's hard to see Notre Dame winning this game. I'm just going to be honest. It's hard to see. This isn't a prediction video. I do those in June. But Ohio State will be a favorite in this game. And it just seems like there's too many things working against Notre Dame in this game, right? It's the first game of the year. This guy's never been a coach before. Ohio State is loaded. It's a home game for Ohio State. They've got a ton of experience on offense because they played so many young guys last year. And their defense really can't be much worse than it was last year. So it's almost has to get better. That was the Achilles heel, really, with Ohio State last year, was their defense. You have to assume it's going to improve. We'll see. It's not that Notre Dame doesn't have a chance here, but I think everyone watching can agree that Ohio State will be the favorite in that Week 1 matchup. Week 2, a much more winnable game there against the Marshall Thundering Herd. First home game for new head coach Marcus Freeman. And then you play Cal at home, a sort of low-level Pac-12 team. So, worst-case scenario there, it seems like probably 2-1, worst-case scenario. Then you play at North Carolina. I feel like people are undervaluing North Carolina. Now, they were one of the biggest disappointments in college football last year. Them and Iowa State were both ranked in the top 10 in almost every preseason poll, and they just completely fell off the map. There was like an 8-game stretch last year for North Carolina where they lost every other game. They're like win, lose, win, lose, win, lose, win, lose. They're very up and down. They've lost Sam Howell. Got to replace him. But Mac Brown is still a pretty good head coach, and he's recruited at a really good level there at North Carolina, and you have to play him there. Now, I do think Notre Dame is a better team than North Carolina, but this is by no means a cupcake game or a guaranteed win or however you want to classify it. I do think this is a potential landmine for Notre Dame. Notre Dame will probably be favored, depending on how that Ohio State game goes. You get blown out by 40 against Ohio State, I don't know, but you lose by 10, 14 points to Ohio State and then win those next 2 games. I would assume you'd be favored on the road at North Carolina. Then you have your bye week. Comes a little early in the year. Play 4 games, bye week, and play 8 games in a row to close out the season. But after the bye week, you have a meaningless neutral site game in Nevada for really no reason. There's just no reason to play this game there. It just makes no sense at all. You're already traveling all the way out west to play BYU. Why not just play them in Utah? It just seems weird to me. But, of course, this is the My Bible is Better Than Yours game, the Mormons versus the Catholics, Notre Dame versus BYU in Las Vegas. Then you play Stanford, kind of a staple on Notre Dame's schedule, play them almost every single year. One of the worst years in a while for Stanford last year, and you get them at home. Have to assume Notre Dame be a significant favorite there. Same thing against UNLV the following week. Why not just play UNLV while you're in Vegas to play BYU? Seems like would make sense to me. You should swap this Stanford and UNLV game and just play them both. But anyway, you get UNLV at home, so maybe that's why. On the road at Syracuse, Dino Babers, probably on his last leg there as head coach. I've done some hot seat videos here lately, and I think Dino Babers may find himself out of a job as head coach at Syracuse after this coming season. Another game where Notre Dame should be a significant favorite. But then you play Clemson, and you get them at home, and yes, you beat Clemson there a couple of years ago when Trevor Lawrence was hurt and didn't play. Great game, and you did beat them. Of course, you had a rematch with them in the ACC championship game, the only conference championship game Notre Dame has ever played in, and Clemson went out there, dragged you out to the 50-yard line, pulled your pants down, bent you over their knee, and spanked your little bottom blue, is what they did. Yet another humiliating major postseason loss for Notre Dame. You get Clemson at home. Clemson's got some offensive issues, and if you watch the spring game, it doesn't appear as though any of them have been fixed. The offensive line is still a bunch of question marks there. Their quarterback, DJ UNCLELOU, looked horrible. There's just no other word to describe that. He was bad in that game. In a sprint, you complete 40% of your passes in a spring game when the defensive linemen aren't even allowed to look at you. That's horrible. So I'm not saying that means Clemson's offense is definitely going to be terrible again in 2022, but there was nothing anybody saw in the spring game that would give you any confidence that it's going to be great either. So, maybe Notre Dame's got a shot there. Well, Notre Dame's definitely got a shot there. You definitely have a chance to win that game, but that's a tough game. And then you play Navy, just because, back in the day when you used to win national titles and you scheduled 4 and 5 service academies a year. So now you keep one of them on the schedule for old time's sake. So you play Navy in Baltimore. Boston College, another ACC team, not very good ACC team, one that Notre Dame should be favored in. And then you close things out at Southern Cal. And the thing about this game is, if you're a college football fan, I want this game to be good again. The mid-2000s, when Southern Cal was at the top of the football world and Notre Dame was pretty good too, all those games with Pete Carroll and Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush, and there's the famous game where Southern Cal was playing at Notre Dame, and Notre Dame didn't cut their grass for like 8 weeks or something before that game in an attempt to slow Southern Cal down. And then you had the Bush push there at the end of a game, Notre Dame, Southern Cal. I want this game to get back to that. I'm a college. Georgia's my favorite team, but I'm a college football fan. I want this Notre Dame Southern Cal game to start meaning something again. And it's not really Notre Dame's fault that it hasn't, right? Notre Dame's been a pretty good team over the last decade under Brian Kelly. Southern Cal is the team that has fell off the face of the earth. Well, they've got Lincoln Riley now, Heisman candidate quarterback, and Caleb Williams that he brought with him from Oklahoma, as well as some other players from Oklahoma. Southern Cal's an interesting team this year. Now, they've got some serious defensive issues last year that are probably going to linger over into this year. Let's be real. As good as Lincoln Riley is offensively, nothing about Lincoln Riley gives anybody any confidence about being able to fix a defense. Oklahoma's had one of the worst defenses on planet Earth for the last 6 years straight. So, it's not like I think Southern Cal's going 15-0 and winning the World Series this year, which is what Southern Cal fans will try to tell you because they don't know much about football. But down the road, I think this Notre Dame Southern Cal game can get back to what it used to be, and I think that would be good for college football. Somebody on the West Coast becoming an elite team in general would be good for college football. Southern Cal, Oregon, Arizona State, whoever, UCLA, whatever. Somebody out there needs to start finishing consistently in the top 10. That would be good for college football. And if that means we get another great game at the end of the year like we used to, Notre Dame and Southern Cal, I'm all for it. You have to play them there. Depending on how you do earlier in the season against teams like Clemson and Ohio State and North Carolina, that will determine, I think, whether you'll be favored or an underdog in that game. And obviously how Southern Cal is doing too. But if I had to pick this game right now, I'd probably pick Notre Dame, but thankfully I don't have to pick it right now. But Southern Cal is going to have a really good offense. I don't doubt Lincoln Riley there, but that defense just concerns me out there. But anyway, that's the 2022 Notre Dame football schedule. Again, this is not a prediction video. I'll do my prediction starting in June. So sometime in June or July, I'll put this Notre Dame schedule back up on the screen, go through it again, and tell you whether I actually think they're going to win and lose every single game on here, and then give you a final season record for Notre Dame. I just like to take a look at these schedules in April. Kind of gets me started on how I'm, which way I'm leaning towards a lot of these teams. But let me know in the comments down below, though, what you think Notre Dame's record is going to be this year and who it is you think they might lose to. Appreciate you watching. Have a good morning.